there isn't a universal industry safety standard mandating a yellow background for emergency stop buttons. However, some organizations might opt for a yellow background to enhance the visibility and recognition of the emergency stop button, particularly in urgent situations. Regarding common emergency stop button standards, firstly, color is crucial. Red is the predominant color for emergency stop buttons, widely recognized and easily spotted as a stop function indicator. Secondly, the shape of the button is important. Emergency stop buttons usually feature a palm or mushroom shape. This design facilitates effortless pressing during emergencies. Thirdly, guarding plays a role. Emergency stop buttons should be unguarded, ensuring immediate accessibility during an emergency. Finally, location matters. Emergency stop buttons should be placed in visible and easily accessible areas. When considering color, the standard color for the actuator of an emergency stop device is red. This red actuator must also contrast with its immediate surrounding area. This contrast ensures that the emergency stop is easily identifiable. The background immediately around the mushroom head may be colored yellow to enhance its visibility. However, this is often application-specific or customer-specific. The shape of the emergency stop, often a mushroom head, is designed for easy actuation even when someone is panicking or not looking directly at the button. The unguarded nature of the button ensures there is no barrier to immediate activation. The location of the emergency stop should be determined by a risk assessment of the machinery or process it controls. It should be positioned where it's most accessible during an emergency, considering the potential hazards and the operator's movements. Consulting with a qualified safety professional is always advisable to ascertain the precise safety standards relevant to a specific industry or application. They can help interpret and apply the relevant standards to your unique circumstances. The color red for emergency stop actuators is specified in standards like IEC 60204.1. This standard provides guidelines for the electrical equipment of machines. The contrast requirement ensures that the red color stands out against the machine's normal color scheme. The yellow background is often recommended but not strictly required. It serves as an additional visual cue. The mushroom shape of the actuator is another key element of the standard. It allows for easy activation by a hand or even an elbow if necessary. The unguarded design eliminates any need for a protective cover that could hinder quick access. The location of the emergency stop should be clearly marked and easily reachable from the operator's normal working position and from other locations where an emergency stop might be needed. When selecting an emergency stop button, consider the environmental conditions in which it will be used. Choose a button that is appropriate for the temperature, humidity, and exposure to dust, liquids, or corrosive materials. Also, ensure that the button is properly wired and connected to the control system so that it functions correctly in an emergency. Regular testing of the emergency stop buttons is also crucial to ensure that they are functioning correctly. This testing should be part of a routine maintenance schedule. Furthermore, training employees on the location and proper use of emergency stop buttons is essential. They should know how to activate the buttons and what to do after they have been activated. Specific to your customer requests, you should inform them that a yellow background is not a mandatory requirement, but an optional enhancement. You can explain the benefits of using a yellow background and allow them to make an informed decision based on their specific needs and risk assessment. It's also important to document any decisions made regarding the use of yellow backgrounds in your equipment's safety documentation. This documentation should include the rationale behind the decision and any relevant risk assessments that were conducted. Remember that the goal of emergency stop buttons is to provide a quick and reliable way to stop a machine or process in an emergency. By following the relevant standards and best practices, you can ensure that your equipment is safe and that your customers are protected. In addition to the physical characteristics of the emergency stop button, you should also consider the control system to which it is connected. The control system should be designed to safely stop the machine or process when the emergency stop button is activated. This may involve disconnecting power, applying brakes, or performing other actions to bring the machine or process to a safe state. The control system should also be designed to prevent the machine or process from restarting automatically after the emergency stop button has been released. A manual reset should be required to ensure that the cause of the emergency has been addressed before the machine or process is restarted. Proper wiring and connections are essential for the reliable operation of emergency stop buttons. Use appropriate wiring methods and connectors to ensure that the connections are secure and that there is no risk of accidental disconnection. Label the wiring clearly so that it can be easily identified and traced. Regularly inspect the wiring and connections for any signs of damage or deterioration. Replace any damaged or worn components promptly. Training is a critical component of any safety program. Employees should be trained on the location and proper use of emergency stop buttons. They should also be trained on the potential hazards associated with the machinery or process and the steps they should take to avoid those hazards. Training should be conducted regularly and should be documented to ensure that all employees have received the necessary information. In addition to the above considerations, it is also important to comply with any applicable local, state, or federal regulations regarding emergency stop buttons. These regulations may vary depending on the industry and the specific application. Consult with a qualified safety professional to ensure that your equipment meets all applicable requirements. When discussing emergency stop buttons, it's also useful to consider the concept of risk assessment. A risk assessment is a systematic process for identifying hazards and evaluating the risks associated with those hazards. The results of a risk assessment can be used to determine the appropriate safety measures to take, including the selection and placement of emergency stop buttons. A risk assessment should consider all potential hazards associated with the machinery or process, including mechanical hazards, electrical hazards, chemical hazards, and ergonomic hazards. The assessment should also consider the likelihood of each hazard occurring and severity of the potential consequences. Based on the results of the risk assessment, you can determine the appropriate level of safety protection needed and select the emergency stop buttons and control system that will provide that protection. Remember that safety is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. Regularly review your safety procedures and update them as needed to reflect changes in the machinery, process, or regulations. Encourage employees to report any safety concerns they may have and take prompt action to address those concerns. The use of emergency stop buttons is just one element of a comprehensive safety program. A comprehensive safety program should also include elements such as hazard communication, personal protective equipment, lockout/tagout procedures, and machine guarding. By implementing a comprehensive safety program, you can create a safer workplace for your employees and reduce the risk of accidents and injuries. It's important to distinguish between different types of emergency stop devices. Firstly, there are emergency stop push buttons, which are the most common type. These buttons are typically red with a yellow background and are designed to be easily activated in an emergency. Secondly, there are emergency stop rope pulls, which are used to stop machinery over a longer distance. These rope pulls are typically connected to a switch that will stop the machinery when the rope is pulled. Thirdly, there are emergency stop palm buttons, which are similar to push buttons but are designed to be activated by the palm of the hand. These buttons are often used in applications where the operator needs to be able to stop the machinery quickly and easily. The selection of the appropriate type of emergency stop device depends on the specific application and the potential hazards involved. The emergency stop circuit should be designed to be fail-safe. This means that if there is a fault in the circuit, the machinery will stop automatically. The emergency stop circuit should also be designed to prevent the machinery from restarting automatically after the emergency stop button has been released. A manual reset should be required to ensure that the cause of the emergency has been addressed before the machinery is restarted. Regularly test the emergency stop circuit to ensure that it is functioning correctly. This testing should be part of a routine maintenance schedule. When installing emergency stop devices, follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully. Ensure that the devices are properly mounted and connected to the control system. Use appropriate wiring methods and connectors to ensure that the connections are secure and that there is no risk of accidental disconnection. Label the wiring clearly so that it can be easily identified and traced. Regularly inspect the wiring and connections for any signs of damage or deterioration. Replace any damaged or worn components promptly. Training employees on the location and proper use of emergency stop devices is essential. They should know how to activate the devices and what to do after they have been activated. Training should be conducted regularly and should be documented to ensure that all employees have received the necessary information. When dealing with customer requests, it's important to understand their specific needs and concerns. Ask them why they want a yellow background for the emergency stop buttons. Are they trying to improve visibility, or do they have other reasons? Explain to them the relevant standards and best practices for emergency stop buttons. Inform them that a yellow background is not a mandatory requirement but an optional enhancement. Discuss the pros and cons of using a yellow background. For example, a yellow background may improve visibility in some situations, but it may also be more expensive or difficult to maintain. Help them make an informed decision based on their specific needs and risk assessment. Document any decisions made regarding the use of yellow backgrounds in your equipment safety documentation. This documentation should include the rationale behind the decision and any relevant risk assessments that were conducted. Remember that the goal of emergency stop buttons is to provide a quick and reliable way to stop a machine or process in an emergency. By following the relevant standards and best practices, you can ensure that your equipment is safe and that your customers are protected. The effectiveness of an emergency stop system depends not only on the button itself but also on the overall system design and implementation. Consider the response time of the system. The time it takes for the machine to stop after the emergency stop button is activated should be as short as possible to minimize the risk of injury or damage. The response time depends on factors such as the speed of the machine, the braking system, and the control system. Evaluate the braking performance of the machine. The braking system should be capable of stopping the machine quickly and safely in an emergency. The braking performance should be tested regularly to ensure that it meets the required standards. Design the control system to be robust and reliable. The control system should be designed to prevent malfunctions or failures that could compromise the effectiveness of the emergency stop system. The control system should also be designed to prevent accidental restarts after an emergency stop. Provide clear and concise instructions for the use of the emergency stop system. The instruction should explain how to activate the emergency stop button, what to expect when the button is activated, and what to do after the machine has stopped. Ensure that the instructions are readily available to all operators and maintenance personnel. Regularly review and update the emergency stop system to ensure that it remains effective and compliant with the latest standards and regulations. As technology advances, new and improved emergency stop systems may become available. Stay informed about the latest developments and consider upgrading your system as needed. A well-designed and properly maintained emergency stop system is an essential safety feature for any machine or process. By following the guidelines outlined above, you can help to ensure that your equipment is safe and that your employees are protected. Also, it's important to consider human factors in the design of emergency stop systems. The emergency stop button should be easily accessible and identifiable even in stressful situations. The button should be large enough to be easily pressed even by someone wearing gloves. The button should be located in a prominent position where it is easily visible and reachable. The button should be clearly labeled with the words emergency stop or a similar phrase. The labeling should be in a contrasting color so that it is easily readable. The emergency stop system should be designed to be intuitive and easy to use. Operators should be able to activate the system quickly and easily without having to think about it. The system should provide clear feedback to the operator that it has been activated. For example, the machine should stop immediately and the emergency stop button should latch in the activated position. The emergency stop system should be designed to prevent accidental activation. The button should be recessed or guarded to prevent it from being accidentally pressed. The system should require a deliberate action to activate the emergency stop. The emergency stop system should be designed to be reliable and dependable. The system should be tested regularly to ensure that it is functioning properly. The system should be maintained in good working order. By considering human factors in the design of emergency stop systems, you can help to ensure that the systems are effective and that they are used properly in emergency situations. It is important to remember that the ultimate goal of an emergency stop system is to protect people from harm. By following the guidelines outlined above, you can help to ensure that your equipment is safe and that your employees are protected. The standards that apply to emergency stop buttons can vary depending on the specific application and the jurisdiction. Be sure to consult with a qualified safety professional to determine the applicable standards for your situation. Some of the most common standards that apply to emergency stop buttons include ANSI 11.19, ISO 13850, and IEC 60204.1. These standards provide guidance on the design, installation, and use of emergency stop buttons. They cover topics such as the color, shape, size, location, and functionality of emergency stop buttons. They also cover the requirements for the control system to which the emergency stop button is connected. Be sure to comply with all applicable standards when designing, installing, and using emergency stop buttons. Compliance with these standards will help to ensure that your equipment is safe and that your employees are protected.